You know it's bad when Ryan Clark, former NFL safety and seasoned analyst, has to hit pause on all the pre-game hype just to publicly check one of his fellow media brothers. And not just any bro, Dan Orlovsky, a guy who somehow turned running out of his own end zone into a full-time ESPN career. This all went down right before a huge Lions game, but honestly, that became background noise the second Clark uncorked on the bizarre quarterback discourse that's been bubbling beneath the surface for months. On paper, the debate was supposed to be about who's a generational talent, but in true sports media fashion, it spiraled into something deeper, something that's been brewing in locker rooms, barbershops, and Twitter threads for years.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
At the center of it, Shedeur Sanders, quarterback, star, leader, and apparently not generational enough for certain analysts because, why again? His last name? His measurable stats? Because he didn't come out of the womb with an SEC pedigree? Ryan Clark said enough is enough, and then lit a rhetorical match. Let's backtrack for a second. The whole spark came from yet another glowing segment about Arch Manning. Yes, that Arch Manning, the third-generation golden boy of football royalty. Before he's even taken meaningful college snaps, the media's already anointing him the next Peyton, the next Eli, the chosen one. And listen, this isn't about trashing Arch. It's not even about him. It's about the narrative, the machine, that elevates someone like him to mythological status, while guys like Shedeur have to beg for respect, even after doing everything right on the field. So Dan Orlovsky jumps into the conversation and starts throwing around generational talent, like it's a participation trophy at an elite quarterback camp. He does what a lot of former quarterbacks turned analysts do. He starts listing off measurables. Frame, release, arm angles, NFL traits. You know the drill. The same buzzwords that got Zach Wilson drafted second overall, and had everyone convinced Josh Rosen was the next Andrew Luck. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders has been putting up numbers leading comebacks, surviving behind one of the worst offensive lines in college football, and still showing poise, maturity, and leadership that you cannot teach. And yet, the narrative's always, but can he really do it at the next level? Ryan Clark said nope. Not today. And when he snapped, it wasn't just about Orlovsky. He went for the whole sports media infrastructure. The recycled takes, the lazy evaluations, the weird quarterback worship that always favors a certain type of guy. Clark, clearly fed up, starts dissecting the playbook of how these so-called experts evaluate talent. He points out how guys like Orlovsky will gush over physical traits and bloodlines, but completely overlook what actually wins games: composure, leadership, decision-making under pressure. You know, the intangibles that make or break quarterbacks when everything else is falling apart. And let's be real, Shedeur's been in chaos all season. Getting hit 40 times a game, dragging a struggling Colorado team to relevance, keeping composure in pressers, and still being a leader in the middle of a media circus. If that's not generational resilience, what is? Clark lays it out. Generational talent isn't just about arm strength or how fast you run a 40. It's about being that guy when it matters. It's about making coaches change their schemes. It's about elevating everyone around you. And yeah, it's about doing it over and over again when everyone's betting against you. Meanwhile, media darlings with NFL DNA get passes, get excuses, get infinite chances to develop. And when they flop, the goalposts just magically move. How is it that a player like Shedeur, who's statistically dominant, mentally locked in, and showing all the leadership you could ask for, is still seen as a question mark, while someone like Arch Manning, who's had less than zero meaningful experience, is getting labeled a generational prospect? The answer, as Clark implies, without sugarcoating it, is bias. Not just racial bias, though let's not pretend that isn't baked into this too, but institutional bias. The kind that values pedigree over production, hype over film, legacy over leadership. And here's where Clark really sticks the landing. He calls out the entire media ecosystem that enables this nonsense. The analysts who repeat each other's takes without watching the tape. The ex-players who base everything on gut feel or intangibles, but only for certain players. The fans who eat it all up because the narrative's been spoon-fed to them from high school recruiting rankings all the way to draft day. Ryan Clark isn't just defending Shedeur Sanders. He's defending every player who's been overlooked because they didn't fit the cookie-cutter quarterback archetype. The dual-threat guys who get called athletes before quarterbacks. The confident guys who get labeled as cocky. The guys who don't come from legacy football families, but still manage to ball out on Saturdays. He's not asking for special treatment. He's asking for fairness, for objectivity, for analysts to stop drooling over bloodlines and start watching the tape. And let's be honest, it's not like Shedeur's been perfect. But that's not the point. The point is that he's consistently proven himself against overwhelming odds, and still gets treated like he has more to prove than people who've done nothing. Clark also throws some side eye at the obsession with potential. Like, how many times do we have to hear, he has all the tools, he just needs time? Cool. But when we start talking about the guys who already have the tools and know how to use them, you can feel the frustration in his voice. Not just as a football analyst, but as a former player who's seen this cycle repeat itself over and over again. The same prototypes getting the benefit of the doubt. The same tired storylines. The same broken evaluation system. And look, Dan Orlovsky isn't a villain here. He's just a symptom. But Clark's takedown made it crystal clear. The system needs a reset. Because if someone like Shedeur Sanders still has to fight for recognition after everything he's shown, what hope is there for the next wave of quarterbacks who don't fit the mold? What Ryan Clark delivered wasn't just a defense, it was a manifesto. A line in the sand. A call out to every analyst, scout, and fan who's still evaluating quarterbacks like it's 2005. And you could tell from the reactions online, people heard him. The clip went viral, not just because it was fiery, but because it finally said out loud what so many have been thinking. That the system is broken, that talent is being ignored, and that the media, intentionally or not, keeps reinforcing the same tired hierarchy year after year. Clark's rant was a warning shot. Keep undervaluing the real ones, and don't be surprised when they prove you wrong on Sundays. Because make no mistake, Shedeur Sanders is coming. Whether it's next season or the one after, that kid is going to be in the NFL, and he's going to remember exactly who doubted him. And when he's out there winning games, commanding huddles, and making highlight reels, the takes are going to age like milk. So here's a modest proposal. Maybe stop chasing the next prototype and start appreciating the guy who's already doing it. Start giving flowers to the ones grinding in real time instead of the ones coasting on last names and projections. And to the Dan Orlovskys of the world, maybe next time, check the film before you crown someone. Because when the real generational talent is staring you in the face, and you miss it, that's not just bad analysis. That's malpractice. Oh, and one last thing. Shout out to Ryan Clark for saying what needed to be said loudly, clearly, and on air. Consider this man the winner of the Certified Real One in a Room Full of Narratives award. It's rare, it's prestigious, and frankly, he's earned it. If you're tired of the hype machine ignoring actual greatness, hit that subscribe button and drop your take in the comments. Should Shedeur Sanders be getting more love from the media? Or are we still going to pretend legacy beats leadership? Sound off, and don't worry, we see who's been watching the game and who's just reading the headlines. Let's be honest here, sports media has always had its favorites. The guys they decide early on are special, the ones they fall in love with at Elite 11 camps, or who come from a certain bloodline or played for a marquee program. And once that narrative is set, it's locked in like a Netflix algorithm that won't stop recommending the same 5 shows no matter how many times you scroll past them. That's why what Ryan Clark did was such a breath of fresh air, or let's call it what it really was, a thunderstorm ripping through a room full of echo chambers. He didn't just defend Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback. He defended him as a narrative disruptor, a kid who, by simply performing week after week, forced the media to either admit he's legit or come up with new, increasingly ridiculous excuses for why he still needs to prove more. And for a while, they leaned into that second option. We heard it all. But who has he really played? Can he win behind that O-line? His dad's the coach. How do we know it's real? Like what? This is the same media that will give someone like Drake May a year and a half of bad tape and still say he's got the tools. The same media that treated Trevor Lawrence's rocky rookie season like growing pains, but called Justin Fields a bust after 6 games. The same media that is still trying to make the Mac Jones redemption arc happen even though no one asked. But Shedeur? Nah, for him, the standards are different. He's got to be perfect. On the field, off the field, in interviews, in body language, in who he follows on Instagram. It's not a talent evaluation, it's a vibe check. And if his vibe doesn't match what they're comfortable with, he's not generational. Ryan Clark saw through it. And more importantly, he said it out loud. He called out the people who act like watching a few YouTube highlights and reading a scouting report is enough to call someone a bust or a star. He pulled back the curtain on this entire media industrial complex, where former quarterbacks just pass down the same tire takes to the next guy in a chair, and fans eat it up because, hey, they used to play, they must know what they're talking about. But the thing is, they often don't. Because what Clark understands, and what guys like Orlovsky routinely miss, is that quarterbacking in 2025 is different. It's not just about arm strength, or how pretty your spiral looks on air. It's about how you handle pressure, how you read defenses on the fly, how you make things happen when the play breaks down and everyone's watching. And let's talk about pressure for a second. Because no quarterback in college football had more of it than Shedeur Sanders this year. From day one, he wasn't just playing quarterback. He was carrying a movement. He was the face of a cultural lightning rod. Every snap he took was under the microscope, and every mistake was broadcast like a scandal. And still, he balled. He showed poise. He led. But somehow, that still wasn't enough for the QB whispers who want to tell us that a guy sitting third on the depth chart is the future of the league because his last name is Manning. It's wild, isn't it? Because if we're really talking generational talent, shouldn't we be looking at guys who changed the game? Who flipped the script? Who forced the media to talk about teams they hadn't paid attention to in years? That's what Shedeur did at Colorado. And not just with flashy plays, with execution, with decision-making, with toughness. And let's not forget, this man was getting pummeled every Saturday. That O-line looked like it was made of wet cardboard some weeks. But did he ever tap out? Nope. He stood in the pocket, took hits, made throws, and somehow kept that team in games they had no business competing in. Tell me that's not generational. Clark's takedown of Orlovsky wasn't just about X's and O's. It was about truth. About calling out the double standards that plague this space. Because let's face it, when a quarterback from a smaller program or a less traditional background shows out, they're seen as an anomaly. But when a hyped-up legacy prospect does the bare minimum, they're seen as inevitable. It's exhausting. And Ryan Clark finally snapped. He dragged the idea that quarterback success is only valid if it fits into some pre-approved template. He called out the analysts who hide behind buzzwords like upside and mechanics instead of actually watching the damn games. And he reminded everyone that leadership, composure, and clutch performance matter just as much, if not more, than whatever number someone puts up at the combine. Because at the end of the day, football is not a spreadsheet. It's not a family tree. It's not a "he reminds me of Josh Allen" quote slapped onto a highlight package. It's results. And Shedeur Sanders has them. You want to talk about generational? Fine. Let's talk about what Shedeur represents. A new kind of quarterbacking. A player who doesn't just play the game, but commands it. Who shows up when the lights are brightest. Who takes a program from laughingstock to headline. Who does it all with a chip on his shoulder and a camera in his face, and still keeps it together. And meanwhile, you've got media guys salivating over someone who hasn't even started yet because he's got the right last name. This is why Ryan Clark went off. Because it's not just about Orlovsky. It's about a culture that still doesn't know how to recognize greatness unless it's packaged the way they expect. And it's about making sure players like Shedeur don't get left out of the conversation just because they didn't come through the usual doors. It's not enough to say he's good for where he came from. That's not a compliment. That's a backhanded dismissal. It's saying, we see you, but not like that. And Ryan Clark wasn't having it. He saw the cycle playing out again. The hype machine warming up. The media dusting off the can't-miss prospect narrative for someone who's barely taken a college snap, while simultaneously nitpicking every move Shedeur makes. And instead of playing along, he torched it. So now, the ball's in the court of every sports analyst who wants to talk generational talent. Are you going to keep playing pretend with the narratives? Or are you ready to evaluate what's actually happening on the field? Because Shedeur's coming. And when he gets to the NFL, there won't be time for excuses or narratives. There'll just be tape, and wins, and moments, and all the receipts. And here's the plot twist. When that moment comes, the same analysts who doubted him, they'll be the first ones calling him underrated. They'll be scrambling to rewrite the history books, pretending they were on board the whole time. But we'll remember. Ryan Clark made sure of it. He said it plain. Respect earned should be respect given. And no amount of legacy hype or quarterback nepotism should override that. We've all seen it. The media picks their guy early. They stamp him with that glowing, vague franchise quarterback label before he even plays a full season. Then, when that guy struggles, suddenly, he just needs time, he's learning a complex system, or the classic, he's not surrounded by talent. But let someone like Shedeur Sanders throw one interception or lose a game where he's been hit 28 times. Oh, now he's overhyped, not ready, exposed. That double standard isn't just annoying, it's dangerous. It shapes careers. It determines draft stock. It changes how millions of people perceive these players. And yeah, it messes with real futures. And for what? So we can keep the same boring quarterback archetype alive, even if the results don't match the hype? Ryan Clark saw that playbook in motion and said, I'm not letting y'all do it again. He didn't just defend Shedeur, he called out the systemic rot in how quarterbacks are evaluated. Because let's be real, the old ways of scouting, they're crumbling. The idea that you can watch a guy throw in shorts and a t-shirt and know how he'll respond in a 2-minute drill with his team down 6? That's delusional. That's fantasy football logic. Yet somehow, it's still what so many analysts rely on. And here's the irony. Shedeur Sanders has already passed the kind of tests that actually matter. He's played from behind. He's dealt with chaos. He's had the weight of a national spotlight on his shoulders from week 1. And you know what? He's still delivered. Maybe not every single time, maybe not flawlessly, but with grit, with poise, and with the kind of maturity that you cannot coach. Meanwhile, the generational guys, they're getting flowers for potential, for clean pockets, for having 5-star offensive lines and handpicked receivers. They're being graded on what they could be someday. Shedeur is being judged on what he already is. And somehow, that's not good enough? Ryan Clark wasn't just defending one player. He was putting the whole industry on trial. Because this conversation goes way beyond football. It's about media credibility. About how narratives get built on convenience, not facts. And how dangerous it is when the same voices keep controlling the story. Especially when those voices come from a narrow slice of experience. Think about it. How many times do we hear former quarterbacks break down another quarterback's tape and just get it wrong? They talk about footwork like it's gospel. They obsess over platform throws. And then ignore the stuff that actually wins games. Decision-making, timing, mental toughness. You know what's generational? Carrying a dysfunctional team on your back and making them believe they can win. You know what's not generational? Throwing against air in a pro day workout and getting a standing ovation for it. Ryan Clark knows the game, on the field and in the studio. And he saw the gaslighting creeping in. The kind of sly erasure that doesn't say you're not good, but instead whispers, you're not quite what we're looking for. Well, newsflash, what we should be looking for is production, leadership, grit, intelligence. And guess what? Shedeur checks every box. And if that's still not enough to crack into the elite conversation, then maybe it's not him who needs to level up. Maybe it's the criteria that needs to change. But let's not act like that change is coming easily. Because the sports media machine, it loves its comfort zone. It loves its familiar faces and legacy families. It loves the idea of another Manning more than it loves the reality of a Sanders who's already putting up numbers and carrying programs. The crazy part is, Ryan Clark didn't even have to raise his voice to make his point. He didn't need to scream. The power came from how direct he was. How clear. He laid it out like a closing argument in a courtroom drama. You say you want generational talent? Then stop ignoring it when it doesn't come in the package you expect. You say you value leadership? Then recognize it when it shows up in a kid who's been leading grown men since he was a teenager. You say you watch film? Then watch it. Because the film doesn't lie. But the narratives? Oh, those lie all the time. And let's be honest with ourselves too. This isn't just about quarterbacks. It's about who gets believed, who gets the benefit of the doubt, who gets the second and third chances. Because if Shedeur Sanders had the last name Manning, this conversation would be over. He'd already be a lock for the first round. He'd have GMs talking about intangibles and NFL readiness. Instead, he's got to fight through the noise just to be in the discussion. And it's exhausting. But what's wild is that he still shows up. He's still putting in work, still performing, still carrying himself with class, while the media tries to twist the narrative. And he does it all while being one of the most scrutinized young players in the country. That's not hype. That's not a media creation. That's real. So when Ryan Clark took that mic and lit into Dan Orlovsky, it wasn't petty. It wasn't personal. It was necessary. It was the verbal version of slamming the brakes on a runaway train of recycled takes and saying, wait, let's look at the facts. Because somewhere along the way, people forgot what this was supposed to be about. Not projections. Not bloodlines. Performance. Period. So here's the deal. If you're still clinging to the idea that quarterback talent can be predicted by how clean someone's throwing motion looks at a summer camp, you're not just behind, you're lost. If you're still dismissing guys like Shedeur because they didn't come up through the traditional pipeline, you're missing the moment. And if you're still listening to analysts who clearly haven't watched the games they're talking about, that's on you. Because at the end of the day, the real ones don't need hype. They make noise just by showing up. And whether the media is ready or not, Shedeur Sanders is coming. And when he does, he's bringing the receipts. So shout out again to Ryan Clark for putting the truth above the takes, for breaking the cycle, for defending not just Shedeur, but every player who's had to earn respect 3 times over just to get half the credit. If you've ever felt like the narratives just don't add up, if you're tired of the same faces getting all the love while the ones doing the work get ignored, this is your moment. You're not crazy. You're not bitter. You're just seeing through the noise. Drop a comment below. Let us know what you think. Is Shedeur being underrated? Are the analysts stuck in the past? And what does generational even mean anymore? Oh, and hit that subscribe button. Because we're not done tearing down the myths. We're just getting started.